You know, it's sometimes easy to think sexual harassment is, well, someone else's problem, right? Happening maybe in big corporations or certain industries. But the truth is, it's everywhere.
It really is. Affecting people across all sorts of demographics, different income levels, it's surprisingly common.
Which brings us to our focus today. Community-based organizations, CBOs. We want to explore how these vital groups can create work environments that are genuinely safe and respectful for everyone involved.
And it's so critical for CBOs, isn't it? I mean, these are organizations often working directly with communities, fighting for rights, for well-being. They absolutely need to reflect those values inside their own walls.
Exactly. Their internal culture has to match their external mission. So to help us unpack this, we're looking at a really useful resource today.
Yeah, it's a training manual from the Southern Africa Litigation Centre, SALC.
Right, SALC, and it's specifically aimed at helping CBOs figure out how to develop their own sexual harassment policies. So think of this deep dive as maybe a shortcut, a way to grasp the key bits and, the why behind having such a policy for a CBO.
That's the plan. Extract the core ideas from the manual, give you a clear picture of building these essential frameworks.
Okay, so where do we start? The absolute foundation, I guess.
Let's start with the definition. What is sexual harassment according to this manual? It boils down to unwanted conduct of a sexual nature.
Unwanted, that feels like the crucial word there.
It is. It's all about the line between behavior that's welcome, maybe even friendly, and actions that cross that line, making someone feel, well, uncomfortable, unsafe, demeaned.
Okay, so it's not always the most extreme examples we might think of first. The SCLC manual brings up some important details, right? Like persistence.
Yes, exactly. While a single severe incident can definitely be harassment, the manual points out that sometimes it's the persistence of unwelcome actions. Also, crucially, if the person receiving the attention clearly says, hey, this is offensive or stop, that boundary is crossed.
Makes sense. But what if they don't explicitly say stop?
That's a key point the manual raises.
Mm-hmm.
Harassment can still occur if the person doing it should have reasonably known the behavior was unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the context, their position, the nature of the conduct.
Right. So there's an element of responsibility there to be aware of how your actions might land in a professional setting.
Absolutely. And to make this less abstract, SALC gives concrete examples, things like making derogatory comments about someone's appearance or their sexual orientation, their gender, even if someone tries to pass it off as a joke.
Yeah, those jokes can be incredibly undermining. What else?
Creating or, say, posting sexually offensive material. That could be anything from emails, messages, to literally pinning something up in the office.
Inappropriate flirting, too, I imagine. That can be a gray area sometimes.
Yeah, it can. The manual addresses it. Even flirting that might be okay in a purely social setting, if it happens at work, is unwanted or persistent. It can damage professional reputations. It can create an awkward or even intimidating atmosphere.
That professional boundary is key then.
Definitely. Other examples include persistently asking someone out after they've said no, using obscene language or gestures, telling crude jokes about sex or gender, sending or showing sexually explicit pictures or messages. Stuff like that really poisons the work environment.
And it doesn't stop at words or images, right? There are physical actions, too.
Yes, absolutely. The manual is clear on this. Invading personal space with unwanted touching. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, more severe acts.
Right.
Threats, coercion, stalking to get sexual favors.
Right.
Actually demanding or proposing sex. And ultimately, sexual assault. It covers a whole spectrum of harmful behavior.
Okay, so given that wide range, why is it so important for CBOs specifically to have a formal policy like the one SALC helps them create?
Well, the manual frames it as being fundamentally about eliminating unfair discrimination. Sexual harassment is discrimination based on sex, gender, sexual orientation.
So it connects directly to core principles of fairness and equity.
Exactly. The goal is a workplace where everyone's dignity, their privacy, their integrity, their right to equity are genuinely respected. It's about living those values.
And beyond the values, the SALC manual probably points to some practical reasons too, especially for CBOs, which might be smaller, rely heavily on trust.
Oh, absolutely. Firstly, the hard truth is sexual harassment happens everywhere, including CBOs. A policy acknowledges that reality. Secondly, it just makes the workplace safer. Protecting people leads to better morale, better focus on the mission.
And I suppose from a practical standpoint, having rules laid out can stop things escalating.
Precisely. The manual suggests a good policy can help sort out issues before they potentially blow up into messy disputes, costly legal action, or damage to the CBO's reputation in the community.
Which can be devastating for a community-focused organization.
Hugely. It also sends a clear signal from the top, from management, that this behavior just isn't on. It won't be tolerated. And, importantly, it tells employees what to do if something does happen. Where do they go? How do they report it?
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. Based on the SALC guidance, what are the essential pieces that need to be in a CBO's policy? The must-haves.
Right, the core components. First up, a really clear, comprehensive definition of sexual harassment. Everyone needs to be on the same page about what behavior we're actually talking about.
Makes sense. Define the problem clearly. What's next?
Explicit examples of prohibited conduct. So drawing on those things we just discussed, the comments, the materials, the unwanted advances, the touching, listing examples makes it less abstract.
And if someone experiences or sees this happening, what does the policy need to provide then?
A clear, accessible reporting mechanism. This is critical. The SALC manual stresses explaining how to report the process, who the designated contact person is. Make it easy to understand. Maybe even include sample forms.
So lower the barrier to reporting?
Exactly. Encourage prompt reporting, even if it's just verbal initially, and guide people to use the internal procedures first.
What about protecting the person who reports? That seems vital.
Absolutely fundamental. The policy needs strong assurances of confidentiality as much as is possible during an investigation, obviously, and a rock-solid statement prohibiting any retaliation against someone for reporting or even just participating in an investigation.
No one should be punished for speaking up. So a report comes in, then what?
Then the policy needs to outline the investigation process. How will the CBO gather information fairly? Who gets interviewed? The complainant, the accused, any witnesses? It needs to be prompt and impartial.
Okay, and if the investigation finds the policy was broken?
The policy should spell out the possible consequences, disciplinary actions. This could range from, say, a formal warning, mandatory counseling, maybe suspension, or even termination, depending on how serious it was.
It sounds like it covers reacting to incidents well. Does the SALC manual also push for proactive stuff? Prevention?
Yes, very much so. Through training and awareness, the policy should state the CBO's commitment to educating everyone what harassment looks like, how to prevent it, and reinforcing those reporting procedures. Regular training helps build that respectful culture.
So it's not just a document that sits on a shelf?
Hopefully not. Other key things the manual recommends: stating compliance with relevant laws, local, national, international, specifying how the policy gets communicated during onboarding, maybe posted visibly, available internally, maybe in different languages if needed.
Good point about languages for diverse CBOs. Anything else?
And finally, a commitment to review the policy regularly.
Yeah.
Things change, laws evolve, best practices improve. The policy needs to stay